All right, welcome back to another episode of Path of Purpose. Today, Laurel Orley is my guest. Laurel Orley is the co-founder of Daily Crunch Snacks. Laurel, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Awesome. Laurel, would you mind just describing your story to the audience?
Yeah, so my story, so where to start? Um, I am the co-founder, though I and the Crunch executive officer of Daily Crunch Snacks. We are a sprouted nut snack company that makes uniquely crunchy sprouted nut snacks that taste as good as they make you feel. And we will be 5 years old in March of 2025. I am from New Jersey and moved to Tennessee 10 years ago. Um, and I decided to go to the dark side, AKA become an entrepreneur right before the pandemic. And it's completely changed the trajectory of my career and my life. And I'm so excited to share more about my story.
Awesome. Could we start with how did you get involved with Daily Crunch Snacks from being in you were at
Yeah.
Mindshare prior to that for what was it, 12 years?
Yeah, I was there at the 12, 13. I mean, after 10 years, like it's all just a blur. But I I was here and I had my third child who just turned 7 last week, Julian, and I think for a while like I had this, we all have these thoughts that come to us of like change. Like I couldn't let it go away. I was like, all right, I want change in my life, but I don't know what it is. But I know that what I'm doing, it is no longer, I wanted change. So I had my son Julian, and what brought me to Tennessee was my husband's career. He's in hotel hospitality. And I just said to him, I said, look, I've been working since I was 22, and I really need some time to reflect. I need some time to figure out like what I want my next stage to be. I don't know what that looks like right now. And I'm going to have to just take some time to figure that out. And it's going to be getting vulnerable, going to places that are uncomfortable for me. But I need to do that. And he said in 2000, I think it was 18 or 19, he said, you have my blessing. Things are going great in the hotel industry. What can go wrong? And of course, the pandemic happened and hotels were hit the first and the hardest. But everything's fine now with that. And I kept on going back to my Aunt Diane's sprouted nut snacks. Over 2 decades ago, she took a trip to India and she saw people there soaking nuts and seeds
Mm,
overnight. They did it for brain health purposes. She was really intrigued by the process. And then she went back to the US and she started to test out different dehydration methods with soaking and sprouting. And for me, like she just started gifting them out to friends and family over the years. And for me, whenever she gave me a bag of these sprouted seeds and nuts, they crunched like a chip. They were like
mm.
immediate texture differentiation. I would never ever eat a raw almond. I found them boring. Even though they are super healthy, like I wouldn't be I'd much rather have a bag of Doritos.
Yeah.
And um with these with what she created, like my kids and I would fight over a bag of who can get a
Mm,
bag of these. So I didn't know there were health benefits. I was just like, all right, there's nothing on them and they're so crunchy and
yeah.
delicious. And I kept on going back to them. And I called Diane. I said, Diane, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so scared to call her. I said, I know this is going to sound like out of left field, but you have something so different here with what you've created over the years. Do you want to like make this a real mainstream brand and like
Mm,
basically bring it outside your kitchen? And
yeah.
Diane said to me, she said, I was hoping it would be my daughter who'd want to go into business with me. But as my niece is the next best thing, let's
Yeah.
do this. And she believed in me. She believed in this company. And that's how we got started.
Wow. Wow. So it sounds like I feel like in the health space people who usually start a product are usually people that have had some sort of like health issues and that they need to make some massive change. But it sounds like for you that it was like you just like loved what she was doing so much. Do you feel like that's something that is do you feel like
Yeah.
that's something that's different than other people in the space?
I think that a lot of people have a point of reflection of when they want to start changing maybe their diet. For me, it was when I got pregnant with my first child,
Mhm.
13 years ago, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I cared about what I put into my body.
Mm,
And I really looked, and that was actually the last time I ever had a diet soda. I've never had a
yeah.
diet soda since then, among other things.
Okay.
But that was my point of inflection, where I just
Mm,
was like, I want to eat better for myself. But look,
yeah.
at the end of the day, Jason, you can be healthy until the cows come home. But if it doesn't taste good, no one is going to, a consumer is not going to come back to your product. So
Mhm.
it has to taste good and not only be healthy. And I was going back to Diane's product and her sprouted seeds and nuts because they really satiated, they satisfied my crunch cravings,
Yeah.
where, like, I felt like after I ate them, I wasn't trying to, like, then eat something else that was not good for me. Like, it
Mhm.
definitely was satiating. Um, and I think now that, we're almost 5 years into this, I've learned so much more about the benefits of sprouting, which I can go
Mm.
into as well.
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah, yeah, because you mentioned earlier too that they soak them in India for brain health, but my understanding of it was that people did that to make the digestion process easier with nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, please go into that.
No, you're right. There's a lot of, so when you soak nuts and seeds in water, it starts the germination or sprouting process. And this sheds something called phytic acid. So phytic acid is an anti-nutrient, and when that's
Mm.
removed from the nuts and seeds, it becomes much more nutrient dense, easier to digest, and bioavailable.
Hmm.
Bioavailable is when it absorbs the vitamins and nutrients absorb into your body a lot faster.
Ah.
So a lot of people who have certain issues, even if it's they can't, celiac, certain digestive issues, have emailed us and said, I can't eat nuts, but I can eat your sprouted nuts. Like, what is it? And it's
Mm.
a lot of it is removing that phytic acid. We have a patent with our process as well. So to soak nuts and seeds takes typically between 4 and 12 hours,
Mm.
but our patent is actually soaking it for a much longer duration of time, between 24 and 48 hours.
Mhm.
And that also creates that hollow core, which then gives you that crunch that is that
Mm.
texture differentiation.
Wow. Wait, so you guys have a patent on how long you can soak nuts for in a product?
Yeah, this is huge. So it took us 4 years and a lot of money, which I don't. My lawyers reminded me last week how much we spent on.
Yeah.
Um, but 4 years to get this patent, where it's based on time and temperature. So it's
Mhm.
based on how much time we soak it for, and then the exact temperature that we put in a dehydrator for, and how much time it's in there for. Look, at the end of the day, we have that 24 to 48 hour stronghold of how long we can soak them for,
Mhm.
and anything over 48 hours is going to cause possible like, the water is just not going to
Yeah.
be um is going to start being an issue after 48 hours.
Mm. Wow.
So we have a lot of kill step measures to ensure that there isn't any bacteria that enters into the water, but we kind of own that space, and
Mm.
that's what also makes the almonds especially swell in size to give it a hollow core to then give it a crunch. I mean, think of a
Wow.
potato chip without that
Yeah.
crunch. It's not a potato chip.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, I hate nuts, but they love our product because you get that
Mm.
crunch texture.
Yeah. It's not like biting into like just like a raw nut. It's like, yeah, it's something else. It's a different texture. So the process, so you soak them and then are they like baked or you said dehydrated? So is that like a
Mhm.
low temperature?
Yeah.
What is that?
So anything that's raw is 118 degrees or lower. So we're not
Mm.
raw, but anything that's roasted, which is typically roasted in oils, is 180 degrees and over.
Mm.
So you can say that we're baked or that, it's dehydrated, but it's between 119 and 179 degrees. So it's
Yeah.
typically, depending on the flavor, between 140 and 155.
Wow. And how long do they typically have to dry for after they're soaked? Sorry, I have so many
So,
technical
oh
nut
my gosh,
questions.
yeah. So a lot of it is we measure everything. We actually work with massive commercial dehydrators. I mean, think
Mm.
of like a massive, massive truck on the highway. Like that is the
Yeah.
size of one of our dehydrators.
Wow.
Um, and we have to test the water levels
Mhm.
where it has to get to a certain percentage where all that moisture is removed, and we
Yeah.
can't remove them until we get there, and that typically takes between 24 and 48 hours, again depending on the
Wow.
flavor. So it's kind of like a set it and forget it, where it goes in the
Mhm.
dehydrator, and then after 24 to 48 hours, um, that water level is down to where it needs to be, where all the excess moisture is removed, and we can
Mm.
bag them.
What does that do to the shelf life of it, like compared to like a regular almond
Yeah,
or
I
like
mean,
or
our
even a
shelf
roasted one?
life, yeah, I mean, so our shelf life is 15 months. However, a really amazing media outlet is going to be doing an article on us in Q1 25, talking about how you can actually extend the shelf life of sprouted nuts or just nuts in general
Mhm.
by putting them in the freezer or the refrigerator.
Mm.
Um, because there are just certain oils that are on nuts and seeds, and when that's at room temperature, it can make the rancidity of the nuts and seeds exacerbate it. But if you
Yeah.
put it in the refrigerator, but typically shelf stable, it's 15 months.
Mm. And can you I know that you guys do almonds, but can you do this with like walnuts and other nuts too?
Oh yeah, so we also have sprouted walnuts, we have
Okay.
sprouted cashews, we have sprouted pumpkin seeds.
Mm.
Um, we have a new SKU. Okay, hearing it here first. We have a new SKU coming out. We are launching nationally in Whole Foods
Mm.
later this month. Every single Whole Foods in the United States and Canada,
Wow.
and one of them is with a new exclusive SKU that will be the first time we're not including almonds in the mix.
Mhm.
So we're going to be diversifying ourselves a lot more outside the almonds in the next 12 to 18 months.
Wow. Whole Foods, that seems that's pretty big news. Every Whole Foods in the country?
Hmm.
What is that, like 2,000 stores or something?
I think it's like 520.
Okay.
But it's just really, I think for us, we launched during the pandemic, and we were hoping to get into the Sprouts and Whole Foods of the world.
Mhm.
Um, and when we launched, a lot of retailers were like, if you're not milk or toilet paper, like, don't bother us. We're dealing with a pandemic. We cannot
Wow.
look at new emerging brands.
Mm.
And for me, I didn't it was really hard to throw that CPG, consumer packaged goods playbook, out the window.
Yeah.
Um, and just really start to have to think outside the box of where we should go, when typically better for you brands launch in Sprouts and Whole Foods first.
Yeah.
So the fact that we are now launching in a Whole Foods is a really incredible moment for the team.
Mm. Wow. What did so that I can't think of like a more challenging time to like start like a consumer goods product than that time. Like what were there any like benefits that you found to having that extra time to prepare, I guess, during the pandemic? if that's even how
Well,
you look
actually,
at it.
so
Yeah.
one of our first interns, who is now became our first full-time employee and is our head of
Okay.
marketing, she actually wrote a case study on Daily Crunch of launching an emerging brand during a pandemic that just
Mm.
got published by Harvard Business School.
Wow. You want to say her name? Name drop her?
Kenzie Steele,
Shout
she's
out.
amazing, and we well, I think like there's certain things we're like, oh, we're not going to launch on Amazon yet, and then we're like, all right, well, we're launching on Amazon, like
Mhm.
let's. And I think we're not the same brand that we were 4 years ago,
Yeah.
so it forced us to really start to lean into what our core consumers at that time were giving us feedback, leaning into that feedback, growing as a brand. We were extremely bootstrapped,
Hmm.
like
Mm.
extremely. And
Wow.
we had to be very resourceful with, working on companies like Unilever. Um, we didn't have we didn't have any budget. We had no budget. So to say, okay, well, I live down the street from Vanderbilt. We've had probably 20 interns out of Vanderbilt so far on our team. And it's been so incredible how they have all like helped push us forward with
Mm.
also what they're so good at, of like,
Yeah.
oh, I can be a photographer, and like let's get a box and let's just do the assets ourselves. Let's just do
Mm.
the images. Let's do the photography ourselves. Let's do this ourselves. And started to build a brand book, a culture, and just start. We've done packaging changes multiple times,
Mhm.
and just start to build that out. And I actually am so glad we didn't launch into Whole Foods
Mhm.
back in 2020, because the truth is we would have failed back then.
Mm.
We would have totally been discontinued, and we were not ready for it. And we are ready for it now. So
Mm. It sounds like there's also a really unique leadership skill in there too, to be able to identify like what people's strengths are and to be able to orchestrate that into the greater mission of what you're doing.
um yeah, I mean, the greater mission of what we're doing is just giving consumers more options in what we
Mhm.
call a very kind of dusty category, where you can have raw, boring nuts and seeds that are good for you, or you can have the opposite of where they're baked into like encoded with sugar, artificial sweeteners, artificial
Mhm.
flavoring, and it defeats the purpose of what a nut is, which has so
Yeah.
many incredible benefits.
Yeah. So do you ever soak and I guess bake your own nuts, or do you like only eat your products?
So, well, it's funny because my 13-year-old son, they're like so over it. They're so over it. They're over Daily Crunch.
Yeah.
The other day, we were in like the Buffalo airport in New York, and my daughter's like, Mom, do not turn around. And if you do turn around, please don't make a big deal of it. But like Daily Crunch is in that store, and please do not take a picture. And um, I said to my son, I'm like, I know you guys are over it, but what has been the most exciting moment with me launching this company? And my son said to me, he's like, Mom, I miss during COVID when we were all locked in the house, when we would R&D new flavors and SKUs of
Mm.
nuts and put them all in the dehydrator and then get to try them. He's like, for
Yeah.
me, that was the best part.
Mm.
And I love hearing that, because we have done hundreds, if not thousands, of iterations of all of the flavors that you see in market, so many
Yeah.
flavors that didn't make it to market that are going to make it to market.
Mhm.
And we do all the R&D ourselves. So it's whether me um, or anybody else in the team, we all have dehydrators, and we start in small batches, and then we lean into like how it is, does it align with our brand pillars,
Mm.
and then we grow from there. And then if
Yeah.
we are seriously considering it, then it goes to our co-packer, and they do a dry run in their facility.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your switch from media to shifting into a leadership role? What was that like after being in a space where you were at the same company for 12, 13 years and now going to Daily Crunch? What has that been like? What sort of challenges came
Yeah.
with doing that?
Initially I thought that I was like, oh, I know consumer packaged goods. Like, this is not going to be so hard. In my head, I thought, oh, we'll just launch into all the Whole Foods stores in like 3 months and
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to be so easy. I had no idea of anything outside of media. The legality, the financials, understanding price point, um, every single piece of this company I touch.
Yeah.
And I had to learn, and I'm still learning so much along the way. What I thought I knew then, I now look at it back and I'm like, I am a different person. What I've
Mm.
learned is night and day. When I was on, for example, the Unilever business, if I worked on, you know, soap or personal care and there was a recall in ice cream, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
care because I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not my brand. I don't care. It's all the same company. I should care. I should have
Yeah.
cared. And like, and now that I see the other side of like, they're all interconnected
Mm.
because a recall there affects everything and
Yeah.
everybody. And I have a much different perspective of companies. I
Mm-hmm.
have much different viewpoints that I never was able to understand beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
We just closed our $4 million Series A 2 weeks ago, and we're now in a new phase of our business. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning now this phase post Series A, which is totally new to me.
Yeah. So what has that been like these past 2 weeks, and what you expect to be in the future?
Um, so I mean, I've just been drinking out of a fire hose the past few weeks. We had our first board meeting, and we have I think like we just have very big goals for the next year, 3 years, 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we're making a lot of new hires and just kind of expanding our team to support our growth.
Mm. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you will foresee in the coming weeks?
Honestly, Jason, it's hard for me to think ahead even past this week. There's just so much going on. Like, the biggest challenge is making sure that we have a very successful Whole Foods launch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different facets of what that includes. It includes making sure that we are fully 100% in stock,
Mm-hmm.
that we have zero out of stocks, that we get all possible press that we can get,
Mm.
that, everything is just smooth sailing. And that is one of our biggest priorities the next few weeks.
How have you been managing the stress that comes along with that?
That's such a great question. I'm not gonna like sit here and tell you that everything is easy because it's far from it. It's really hard. And having 3 kids
Mm-hmm.
and a very needy dog and a very needy husband, um, it's it's a constant balance.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that we live in a world where electronics are a big problem for not just kids, but for adults too.
Mm-hmm.
So, we are a mental health mission-based company, and we think that mental health is not only important of how we talk about it to our customers, our
Yeah.
consumers, but also internally. So, I just mandated mental health days for the team, where
Mm-hmm.
once a quarter, everybody on the team has to take a mental health day.
Mm-hmm.
And they can use this time to do whatever they want, but um, it's to take time for themselves, whether that's to
Yeah.
volunteer, to read a book outside. Some of my team said that they went to acupuncture and then they just read a book and a cup of coffee in their
Mm.
backyard. And Um, that is also for me because what I learned also from working in corporate is you look up to the people um, who you report into, and if they're
Mm,
not doing it, then you're not going to do it.
yeah.
So it's also important that if like you don't fill your battery and if you
Mhm.
don't take care of yourself, like everything around you is just going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And um, I definitely have to constantly kind of reset, especially now with the post Series A. It's been really busy,
Mhm.
but know also when to say no. And I'm
Mhm.
learning to say no a lot more because my time is with my family is extremely important to me and
Mm,
also my time to myself.
yeah. What does that, if you don't mind sharing, what does that time for yourself look like? How do you utilize your time alone so that you can show up with your family and
Yeah.
as a co-founder?
There's many different things. So I like to go to hot yoga at in the morning, 5 a.m. It's kind of my time, my space. Nobody bother me.
Mhm.
Um, I have this a dog and I try to go on a hike with my dog once a week. Just to get out, get some fresh air. But also lately it's been really it's about disconnecting. So like
Mhm.
I don't have to be off of LinkedIn. I don't have to be off of Instagram, but like if I want to be on there, then I'm gonna have to go on my desktop. I don't
Yeah.
want any of those apps on my phone. I'm
Mm,
trying to be in control of more of those things than them being in control of me because also my kids notice and then I realize why am I spending all my time like doom scrolling when
mhm.
I have a ton of stuff to do. And
Wow.
I think just like those small things of like instead of just being like I'm not going to go on Instagram or I'm not going to go on LinkedIn, it's like we're just like hey, I can go on my desktop, but when I'm outside of the house and I just have my phone, like I'm not going to be on it and I can be more present. And it's
Mm,
also taking more trips with my family where we can be present. Like we just
yeah.
went on a 5-day canoe trip in Canada,
Mm,
where we canoed and then we camped out and I had no Wi-Fi cell service. And
mm,
it forced me to be completely present. And we're going to be incorporating a lot more of those trips. Like fall break is in a few weeks. We're going to Kentucky. We're going to go rock climbing and just be present, disconnect. So then when it's ready to go back and to work, I could um, refill my battery and get back at it.
yeah. Why do you think it's so hard for us to be present now?
Jason, I feel like there's just so much more going on, especially post COVID. Like, I don't know. I feel like the amount of things that we did in a day has like quadrupled, and we're also expected to do so much more, and we're
Yeah.
putting so much more pressure on ourselves to do it
Mm,
all. And like, I was also saying this to some parents last week. It is like the busiest fall ever. And there's also this guilt, especially with being a parent, that like you have to be at every single thing. Like I get an email from my kid's school every day of a new, like, come to this event, come to that event. And it's like, I can't do everything.
yeah.
So what are the most important things to me?
Mm,
And um and just trying to like set myself back of like what is important to me. I can't
yeah.
be everywhere. Like what do I need? But it's gotten just be a lot for us where we forgot how, you know, we always say to our kids like, oh, be bored. But the truth is that's the same for us too. Like
Yeah.
to be bored, to be present, to be off our screens, to just go on a walk without our phones and just kind of get back to that and get more grounded.
Mm,
You know, and it's constantly a push and pull.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But it sounds like you have a really clear idea of what your priorities are.
It depends on the day. I definitely would, you know, if you ask my husband that, I don't know if he would agree. But no, overall, like I do. Like there's certain things that are just a not like you like there's certain things for my family that I'm like it's a non-negotiable,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to do a better job at that. Um, So it's like when my kids come home from school, I try to just disconnect and be fully present. But
Yeah.
sometimes, there's like work emergencies, and it's like I got to do this.
Hmm.
And I try not to travel a lot, but when I travel, I make sure it's worth it.
Hmm.
And I also really, secretly, I really enjoy sometimes just being on a plane for a work trip where I'm by myself and
Yeah.
I can watch my own Netflix shows.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it like? What has it been like to build a new business with three relatively younger kids?
Um, well, I mean, in some ways, it's extremely rewarding because they get to see um, entrepreneurship at a really young age. Like,
Mm,
I have brought my 13-year-old son to certain trade shows with me where he can demo with me and pass out samples to customers.
yeah.
Um, and then on the flip side, I am trying to do a better job of when it's time to disconnect, when it's like,
Mm,
okay, there's a lot going on outside of my job. And I think in some ways during the pandemic when I launched, like
mhm,
it was so great to have something to start to create back then because it was such a difficult time for everybody, but also for parents where I had three kids in the house. And this was a great outlet for me.
mm,
But I think now, almost 5 years in, um, it's kind of like, okay, like this has been amazing, but let's just set some better boundaries.
yeah. Yeah. Mm, yeah. What do you feel like? Do you feel like where you are now versus when you were starting Daily Crunch? Do you feel like you have more creativity in your day to day or less? And I guess my question would be like, why is that?
I think it's just different creativity. So
Hmm.
I think it's really just, I mean, look, everything I learned from Mindshare is like to be a planner, to plan ahead, to try to stay organized, try to get ahead of the curve.
Hmm.
Um, again, every phase we're at in this company is a different phase. So you're
Hmm.
learning something different. And it's a clean slate. So now we're in this new phase post Series A, and there's a lot that we have to learn around that and
Yeah.
get creative and just there's always so much
Hmm.
learning from other people in the industry, leaning into that, seeing what's working, what's not working. Um, where we were 4 years ago with everything is just different. So
Hmm.
I don't think creativity has changed, but the
Yeah.
company's changed.
Mm. So like the ways in which you are creative are different.
Yeah.
Got it. What would be like some of those ways in which you feel like you have to be creative now? Like I imagine like when you started it, it was more so like focusing on like the product and like packaging, but I guess now what does that look like in your role?
Well, when we launched 4 years ago, we had a much smaller team. So now we're growing our team, and there's certain things that, unfortunately for me, which were the more fun and more creative, um, I'm going to, having to let go of some of those things and focus on
Hmm.
some of the bigger things for the company.
Yeah.
Um, so the marketing team's having a lot of fun being really creative. So this new flavor that we're launching is with another brand, and
Hmm.
I just got the photos back from the photo shoot, and it's just like so incredible to see just how far we've gone. We're like 4 years ago,
Hmm.
we were shooting everything ourselves, and now that we can do that, no, like when, okay, we don't need to do this ourselves anymore. Let's get some more professional people to do it.
Yeah.
And I do love creativity, and I think a lot of that is we're hybrid. We meet half the time in person, half the time remote. And I think like when we're in person, we really try to not have any calls so we can
Hmm.
just ideate off of each other
Yeah.
and just really be present and just
Mm,
talk and ideate. And um I don't know. I'm constantly learning. I don't I don't have an answer.
yeah. Hmm. What do you see yourself doing in like 10 years from now? Do you see yourself doing the same thing?
Yeah. No, I don't. So I think like 10 years from now, either there's different situations that can happen. Either, I think someone told me I'm in a lot of different groups. So like I'm in a YPO group, and one of my group members said like always be paranoid. Like always expect the worst is going to happen, because the truth is the odds are against us. We're an emerging
Mm,
startup brand, and the chances of us succeeding are against us.
mm,
And I want to see this company through to be successful, and I'm constantly paranoid that everything can go wrong along the way.
mm, yeah.
And I I know though 10 years from now, I mean, look, I started Daily Crunch when I had, when I was in my late 30s. So I already had this full career. This isn't my first career. Um, but this will most likely be my last.
Mm,
So um I want to see it grow to a certain point, and then at that certain point, I will know when to either hand the reins to somebody else, or um, a strategic exit where we'll sell it. Or,
yeah.
none of those happen and we fail. So
Mm,
um I think just to constantly just be with the right people, be with the right mentors to make sure we're doing everything right that we possibly can be doing right now.
yeah. Mm. Why do you think it would fail?
Because if you look at the statistics of all the other companies, and I mean, Jason, only 2% of woman owned companies ever make over $1 million.
Mm,
Um, the fact that we got to that turning point in 2021 is amazing. But like,
mhm,
I've seen so many incredible brands being in the consumer packaged goods that I've looked up to who have failed this year. The environment to raise money right now is extremely difficult. Um, and a lot of companies can make some really big mistakes along the way that they don't know that that's going to hurt them. An
yeah.
example is one of the companies I really looked up to that was in our category. The majority of their business was in Costco.
Mm,
And Costco just decided one day that they didn't want to carry them anymore. That
mm,
was their business.
wow.
Um, so I'm a first time founder,
Hmm.
and I am so fortunate for these groups I've joined. I'm in a female consumer packaged goods group that we meet every month. I'm in a young presidents organization group where we meet every month, and speaking to all these other founders where we can talk to each other, be vulnerable
Mm,
about um, what's going on in our businesses is just, I'm so thankful for that, because it shouldn't be a lonely
yeah.
venture. And I'm also grateful that I have two co-founders.
Mm,
So I have my Aunt Diane, and then I have Dan, who is a second time founder. And I have learned so much from him that he's already been a founder in the CPG space.
mhm,
But I would not, 100% would not have been able to do this by myself.
yeah. Wow. So let's say then you get purchased or successfully exit and it's like 5 years from now. Then you mentioned this would be your last venture or the
Mhm.
last part of your career.
Yeah, because it's being a founder it is everything. I put 110% in everything that I do for this company.
Yeah.
And it is every piece of me is this. And I I also see the flip side where 4 years ago I was like, all right, this is, all right, you do be an entrepreneur once. I don't understand all these like people who are like second, third, fourth, fifth time entrepreneurs. And now I do get it. I get it. Cause like there's it's so exciting as well.
Yeah.
But I see how people maybe aren't founders of brands, but maybe
Hmm.
they are advisors or maybe they're on the board. So there's so many ways that you can still be involved, but you
Yeah.
don't have to be the founder.
Yeah. So you're saying that those are things that you would want to do next time around?
I mean, I have to be honest, Jason, that I really can't think past next week. There's so
Yeah.
much going on. And
Yeah.
I don't want to ever think that we are going to exit or any of those things. I think right now, like our big focus is just, there's a lot on the plate for 2025. And that's
Yeah.
my only focus right now.
Wow. It sounds like you really take it day by day, or try to at
A
least.
lot of that is, well, yes and no, because we also, I don't know if you've read the book Traction, but Traction is just a great book to, set up quarterly. We have quarterly meetings where we have our quarterly goals, annual goals, 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals. So
Hmm.
it's very important, I think, to have like a strategic roadmap of where you're going. But at the same time, we're so small in the
Hmm.
scheme of things in this category, which is a multi-billion-dollar category in the United States, that we we also have to kind of lean in to real time and certain things that happen. And also with being an entrepreneur, it's like you can plan all these things out, but there's going to be so many things that you cannot account for that are going
Mm,
to happen
yeah.
and you're going to have to deal with along the way. I mean, look, we got deactivated on Amazon in April. I
Mm,
was not anticipating that. We were expecting to do massive, massive
wow.
sales on Amazon this year. And you're not allowed to ask for reviews from friends and family. And or we put in inserts asking like, oh, if you like our products, leave a review. If you don't, please email us. You're not, evidently you're not supposed to do that, but everybody does it.
Yeah.
And we got caught and they're like, we're
Wow.
deactivating you. And it's like, I think that's one of the biggest differences, like being an entrepreneur
Hmm.
is like all of a sudden these things land on you, and
Yeah.
being at a big company, it's kind of like, okay, like that's not good, but
Yeah.
it's not really my problem. It's not my
Yeah.
problem. And now it's like, oh wow, like this is a really big problem, and we have investors that we have
Mm,
to speak to about all these things. So I think like just my motto is just transparency, always being transparent with the good, the bad, the challenges. I don't like to sugarcoat anything. I like to say, all right, this is what's going on.
yeah.
And if you can help us, great. But if you can't, like I just want you to know.
Mm, wow. I what it makes me think about like the people that are funding you then, and like if, because yes, ideally like we should be able to be like honest and open with, but like I've also heard a bunch of stories of like founders that just kind of like want to be politicians when it comes to meeting with the board and meeting with the founders. So what could you say about like, I guess, to a founder who's like trying to navigate um
Yeah.
like who to team up with,
Yeah. And I mean, look,
when
Jason,
that, go
yeah,
ahead.
I've heard those stories too. I I've had friends where they brought in the wrong investors and it ruined their company.
Yeah.
So I I think like, look, at the end of the day, we just have to be on our own journey. And um, I had someone who was thinking about investing in us maybe a year ago. Look, I've made my own investments, so I know the respect that I need to give people that I've invested in.
Hmm.
I'm never going to call them on a Saturday night, or I'm never going to email them on a Sunday and expect for them to get back to me. Like, I would never do that.
Yeah.
So I think that I have learned the reverse of how I know how to treat other people I've invested
Mm,
with, where I had someone who started calling me on a Saturday night, texting, calling me Sunday mornings. I think he thought he was trying to be helpful.
yeah.
And I called him and I said, look, this is how it's going to go. if you want to invest with us, you're going to hear from me once a quarter. And everything in that newsletter, everything that you want to know about the company is going to be in that newsletter. But outside that quarterly newsletter, you're not going to hear from me. And I don't have time to talk to you because we're trying to run this business. We're trying to run this company. And if you're not okay with that, that's okay, but don't invest in us.
Wow.
And he didn't. I never heard from him again. And the truth is like, I don't want that person as an investor.
Yeah.
Because as we said before, with like our mental health, like we have to set up boundaries with anything that we do in our life. And if we don't set up boundaries and we don't, then everything else falls apart. And if I don't have my weekends with my family and my friends, or if I am always dropping everything to speak to an investor about some question that they can probably find out about, like without calling me, then like I want to just be running the company.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't want that, then this isn't for them. And that's okay. That's the whole thing. That's okay. There's many other companies out there who are looking for investors.
Yeah.
So, and I think we just all have to do what works for us.
Yeah. It sounds like in that too, there's also like a certain belief in your product and your mission and what you're doing to be able to set up the boundaries and say no to that.
Yeah. And it took a while to get there. I mean, initially I was a pushover. Like I was like, okay, that's fine. And then it's like, wait a minute, like that's not fine. And wait a minute, I've had to grow much thicker skin being an entrepreneur. And it's, in some ways it's been really hard, but also really liberating.
Yeah.
To just have to say no or to say, I'm sorry, like, but that's just the way it is and not changing.
Yeah. How do you, like, what advice would you have to someone who's trying to like cultivate that part of their self?
Give yourself some grace, first of all. Like just give you, so this morning I'm driving my kids to the bus and this guy is like speeding down my street. I live in a neighborhood, and I'm pulling out of my driveway and he had to slow down for me and he like didn't want to. And he cursed me off in front of my kids, gave me the finger. And I said to my kids, I said, you know what? Like he's having a bad day. It's him. It's not us. And he had a bad day. So I hope he has a better day, but wasn't our problem, wasn't our fault. Yeah. And I think like we have to give ourselves just some grace of like, it's hard. Things are going to be hard and you don't have to be perfect at everything. And I think one of the things that connects us as humans is when we are vulnerable and when we could actually show that side to us. That's what connects us to real friendships, to realness. And I have a hard time with parents who are just like, everything's great and I'm never volunteering versus the mom that's like, I've had a really hard day. I missed this. I was late for this. And it's like, that's okay for us to just take that moment to just say, we're doing the best we can. How can we improve and how can we work on it? But like to just give some grace.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I'm constantly learning. If you have any advice, Jason, you want to give, I'd love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, you're much more versed in this area. Like for me, in my sort of area of like starting a business, like I'm so at like the beginning of things, you know, like for me, I felt like I had a idea of like what I wanted to be doing and having a firm conviction in knowing the value that I could add, but at the same time facing the challenge of not knowing how to do sales, not knowing how to do marketing, not knowing like how to run a business, you know? So yeah. I feel like for me in that sort of journey, what's been the guiding light is like, what am I meant to be doing? Like, how am I growing in what I'm doing? And is this something that I'm willing to drive Uber for to like make this work, you know? And so I would say that I would, yeah. And if you have, I mean, if you have any other advice, all ears. You're the one who's been through it
Yeah,
and have done this, you know.
just
And
start.
I guess, yeah, just
Just
one other
start.
thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, what were
Well,
you gonna say?
I was just gonna say also, like, I have a lot of people saying like, oh, you need to like, because the first like 4 months I was trying to do like consulting and trying to like take that approach of uh, being a death doula and trying to help leaders relieve stress so that they could focus on leading more effectively. And yeah, in that I didn't really know what I was doing, but at the same time, there was so much noise. Like people are like, "Oh no, you can't do that. If you want to do consulting, you need to have this many years doing this first and do that." And it's yeah. So I would say that that's been honestly one of the biggest challenges that I've faced is trying to like focus on something, trying to have that belief in myself, and then also trying to overcome like all the other external noise of other people.
Yeah, and someone gave me the best advice. One of my good friends who started the Home Edit, they're like an organization company that got sold to Reese Witherspoon. But I kept on saying to her, I'm like, "Ah, I don't know if I can do this. And she's like, stop thinking about it. Just start. Literally
Yeah,
just start somewhere. And it kind of is like the same thing with like going back to the gym or this and that. Just start.
yeah,
Just start. Start somewhere. And the thing is, you're gonna grow and learn from where you start.
yeah.
You just gotta get started.
Yeah. Yeah, someone said that to me yesterday and I thought it was really good advice of just like just keep taking action. But then like I'm an overthinker if you couldn't tell already, but then like my question would become like what what do you think about like your quality of work when you're like feeling all those things versus like when you're uh when you're not feeling those things?
I don't think I understand the question, like the
Like
quality of
your
work.
yeah, your quality of work and how you show up in the work that you're doing when you're feeling that doubt, when you're feeling that stress versus when you're not feeling those things.
Um, I think sometimes feeling those things can help you move forward. I think it's just kind of how you process it, but I'm an overthinker too. Um, and I think again, it also goes back to like having people to support you
Yeah.
who, joining a group of other maybe entrepreneurs or people who also are trying to be death doulas and just having a support group because
Yeah.
I think the worst thing is just when it's spinning in your head and like then you versus like having a group of people are like, oh wow, you think that too, and like how did you
Yeah.
get through it?
Mm,
And the best, I would not still this wouldn't I wouldn't be still with Daily Crunch if I didn't have these two groups in my life. We're
mm,
meeting monthly to talk about things. I mean, I almost threw in the towel 2 years ago when we got,
wow.
like, a massive shipment of nuts that were rancid, and
Mm,
we didn't have the right insurance to protect ourselves then, and I was like, I think I was like, "I'm done. Like, I can't do
wow.
this anymore." And it was my group that like, right when this happened, I had to call my group. I was like, "I guess I'll join," and I just shared with them, and they spent the entire 2 hours talking to me about what to do,
Wow.
and I've learned so much from that where I know how to protect myself now from any of
Mm,
those issues happening.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Value and community.
Yeah, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and just sharing your experiences and talking about what you've been working on. I really appreciate it.
thank you so much for having me. And full circle since I, worked with your mom. So, thank
Yeah,
you again for having me. Appreciate it.
of course. All right. I think it just needs a sec to upload, but yeah, thank you so much
Thank
again for
you.
coming on. And also, I like